In the U.S. Southwest, mining was synonymous with the name Phelps Dodge, a company begun in 1834 by Anson Green Phelps and William E. Dodge. The two men bought an Arizona mining claim and created the Copper Queen Consolidated Mine, which later became the Morenci Copper Mine, the largest open-pit mine in the world. With production in the mine expanding, Phelps Dodge formed the Arizona and Southeastern Railroad in 1888. They built a new smelter to which the railroad was extended. The line was renamed the El Paso and Southwestern Railroad in June 1901, even before the line reached El Paso. In New Mexico, the city of Alamogordo was founded in June 1898 as the brainchild of New York entrepreneur Charles Eddy. It was located 90 miles north of El Paso at the foot of the Sacramento Mountains. It was a railroad town for Eddy's El Paso and Northeast Railroad. The Alamogordo Lumber Mill was founded in the same year. Originally, the company owned 45,000 acres of timberland in the Sacramento Mountains, adjoining the Mescalero Indian Reservation. The company managed the timber harvest, and its operations were very extensive. In 1905, the mill had the capacity of 230,000 feet of lumber per day. 30% was made into railroad ties, with the remainder into yard stock. Their market extended to Chicago, Kansas, and Nebraska, also to Colorado, El Paso, and Arizona. Phelps Dodge also had an interest in timber in the mid-1830s. Phelps Dodge accepted timberlands in Pennsylvania in lieu of payment for a debt. Later, it built the world's largest lumber mill there, establishing a timber agency. Growing copper demand led to more and larger smelter operations for Phelps Dodge in El Paso. This generated a growing need for coal and coke to operate these smelters. On July 1st, 1905, Phelps Dodge bought Charles Eddy's properties of the El Paso Northeastern Railroad, including the Alamogordo Lumber Mill. Consisted of a main line from El Paso northeast to Tucumcari, New Mexico, and included the branches of Alamogordo to Cloudcroft and Russia. They also acquired the Dawson Railway, a long line northwest from Tucumcari to Dawson, New Mexico. This gave Phelps Dodge links between the coal fields around Dawson and their smelters in El Paso, and from their copper mines in southern Arizona to El Paso. To connect the railroads, New Track had to cross the line of the Southern Pacific Railroad. Aware that the Southern Pacific had only 2 watchmen on the route, the El Paso and Southern stopped all trains on either side of the junction and laid its new track across that of the Southern Pacific. In one day, the El Paso and Southwestern ran more than 500 fully laden hopper cars across the new junction to establish a right-of-way. Following the 1917 entry of the United States in World War I, demand for copper munitions and communications exploded. This caused rapid expansion of the copper industry, and traffic on the El Paso Southwest saw both freight and passenger traffic grow. By 1917, the El Paso and Southwestern Railroad had more than 1,000 miles of track in operation. The same year saw the railroad involved in a breach of civil liberties. 1,300 striking miners and others were marched from Bisbee, Arizona along railroad tracks toward cattle cars, and then were deported more than 200 miles to Mexico. The participants were indicted in Chicago, but the matter petered out. Following World War I, copper prices dropped, causing many mines to cease or reduce activity. Railroad traffic fell drastically, putting a financial strain on Phelps Dodge. Focusing on their core business of copper production, Phelps Dodge decided to sell the railroad. Southern Pacific offered to purchase the railroad for some $64 million. They took control in November 1924 by leasing the railroad, but didn't fully merge operations until 1955. In the early 1900s, the coal mining town of Dawson prospered. It had its own newspaper, the Dawson News, a theater, hotel, modern homes, and hospitals. Then disaster struck, not once but twice. In 1913, an explosion in the mine killed 263 miners plus 2 rescuers. Then in 1923, another explosion killed 120 men. Surprisingly, though, the town didn't die, but rather went on until the mine was closed down in 1950. When the mine closed, Phelps Dodge sold the whole town, buildings and all, to be carried off to other locations. Today, the cemetery is the main thing to see at Dawson. The Southern Pacific subsequently was taken over by the Union Pacific Railroad in 1996, following years of financial problems. In 2007, Freeport Mining acquired Phelps Dodge for $26 billion in cash and stock to create the world's largest publicly traded copper mining company with 25,000 employees at the acquisition. Alamogordo was envisioned by Charles Eddy as a community featuring large, wide thoroughfares and irrigation ditches lined with the great cottonwood trees. Eddy's instincts were right, and the cities and trees are still flourishing today. The combination of economic and political freedom produced a golden age in the United States in the 19th century. Railroads, mining, benefited from the burst of economic exuberance. In the 20th century, saw more economic power in the hands of the government to rationalize that growth. In Europe, total government economic control led to totalitarianism. The United States, at the beginning of the 21st century, still has the freedom to choose.